Hey guys, I'm Dr. William Summers. I go by Bill. I've been practicing OB/GYN in Birmingham, Alabama now for the past 30 years. The past several years, I've extended my practice to include patients with weight management. I get asked all the time, how did that even happen? But to me, there was just a natural evolution. Since I graduated from medical school in 1985, there has been an alarming rise of obesity and epidemic in this country. There has been a persistent misogyny in this culture, and historically, all my patients have been women. And because of the misogyny, well, here's what we deal with. Men gain weight and so often just don't like the weight. And women gain weight and so often don't like themselves. So I wanted to use this time for this video as an introduction to who I am, how I got here, how we all got here. But after this, a series of videos from information that I've learned that I can share regarding lifestyle changes and ways to approach this as a health problem, and hopefully it would benefit you. So, I want to start with a story. So here's the story. A couple of weeks ago, I was approached by a freshman medical student from the University of Alabama here in Birmingham. They had just started school. She had an assignment to find an older doctor and ask a question: what is the most significant thing that has changed in medicine since I've been in practice? Now, in that moment, I told her I think it is my self-awareness that I'm now the older doctor. But seeking something more serious, I think if I was playing Family Feud, the number one answer would be technology. But my answer, I reflected on something pretty deep. And the answer I gave was sincere. It actually inspired the purpose of my next video, which I so encourage you to watch, because there's a message there that I really want to send out. This is my introduction. So I'm going to move on, because when I saw her, I actually had this reflection of myself when I was starting medical school. And even beyond that, I mean, a time when I always wanted to be a doctor. I never knew why. I just always knew I wanted to be a doctor. I did all the educational fulfillments. I applied to medical school at the University of Tennessee. And I received a letter that I was not accepted into the class, which crushed my goals. That's all I had worked for. They told me I can't do it. I actually accepted that I can't do it. Honestly, there's probably a voice in my head so often reminding me, telling me I can't do it. So I got another job. I became a chemist. And this was an amazing job, a great job, except I always wanted to be a doctor. Now, in that position, I learned some very fundamental values that I took with me. Foremost, there must be safety and safety protocols in every situation before any design or plan can be implemented. There is a necessity for precision, accuracy, and taking measurements. And I also sort of shifted my brain, because all through school I had memorized what happened, memorized the results. And here I got into more of the why. If I knew the capabilities of these chemicals, even on a molecular level, then I could sort of figure out what would happen, and it saved me a lot of memorizing. Somewhere during that experience, I hit a reset. I had been accepting I can't, which is really a place of no hope. And somewhere in there, I shifted and thought, well, I didn't. And just that shift allowed me to consider a different strategy. Also, I knew there must be a willingness to work harder. So I quit that job and went full in to apply for medical school, to clean up my resume. On the first day that the University of Tennessee was accepting applications for my class, I handed in a new resume. I mean, this would not even be something I would think they would even consider looking at. I received a notice in about 3 weeks that I was accepted for the starting class, which is awesome. Except for now, I'm broke, no job, and I would not start medical school for 9 months. So desperately, I applied for jobs. I went to the Board of Education in Memphis, Tennessee, and applied for a substitute teacher's position, paid $20 a day. On the second day that school started, I was asked to go to a math and science class at a middle school in North Memphis where I became a teacher for the remainder of the year. So included in my resume, I was a teacher for 1 year. And what I learned in that job is teachers work their butt off. Probably the hardest people I've ever worked around are teachers. They have so many responsibilities on so many levels every day. It is not an 8 to 3 job. I think about how doctors assume more responsibilities and then subspecialize to serve the community. The teachers, all of the things serving education in the community, all in the community, these resources have all weakened or vanished, and all of that has been consolidated onto a teacher. So I still have a passion today for the job I did that year, because when I started medical school, 2 weeks after that job was over, it was easier for me. In my third year of medical school, my first daughter, Casey, was born, and this is when I realized that no matter how much science, the science is incomplete, because when I saw my daughter being born and held her, I knew that was a miracle. Graduation from medical school. And the graduation ceremony, at the end of the ceremony, my name was called out that I was supposed to come up and receive an award for graduating first in my class. I was totally shocked by this. No idea. I remember standing up and being really embarrassed by it because, well, first of all, there were 220 people in my graduating class, and some of the most brilliant people I'd ever met. So I knew I was not the smartest person in that class. I did realize I was going to get an award, at least internally, that I had worked harder and it paid off. And well, I got up and I was going to the podium to get this award, and the faculty was up on stage, all the department heads and the deans, and they had placed a chair up there where I was supposed to go up and sit and join them, I guess, for the end of the ceremony. Sort of a symbolic honor. And so I was walking up to that chair, and I turned around, I could see all my classmates and my family, and they were clapping, and they were all excited, and I just became overwhelmed with the fact that I knew that every single person I was looking at, my classmates, every one of them deserved a piece of this. I mean, there wasn't a day that I did not learn with or from them and my family, looking at them, that all the sacrifices they made, or I wouldn't even be in school. And so I turned around instead of going to the chair, and this had no disrespect at all for this faculty. The faculty at the University of Tennessee are amazing. I mean, they work so hard. That teacher, I work hard, connected to the gene, I guess, linked to the gene for teaching. It's just got to be there because these people work so hard and provide a protocol for all of the students to follow and get us through there. And I respect them so much for that. But I felt like my team of students and family members that had supported me, well, they were a part of this. So I went back to my seat, and I was going through the aisle where my classmates were, nudging me to go back up on stage. And really, when I sat down and we all sat down, to me, there was a sharing of my joy with their joy, and that moment that we all sat up on the stage together. There's sort of a joy times joy, joy squared is what I call it, the most incredible, and that was my award that night. So after medical school, I stayed at the University of Tennessee for my residency, and it's an excellent clinical program. At the end of my third year of my residency, the most unimaginable happened. It was a Saturday morning. I was about to mow the yard. I had one hand on the lawnmower, and I was turned to my wife backing out of the driveway. She was almost 4 months pregnant. My 4-year-old daughter was in the car. They were backing out of the driveway. Suddenly my daughter got out of the car, and my wife left on some errands. The car that pulled back in my driveway was not the same car. Instead, it was a police officer. He informed me that my wife had been killed instantly when a car crossed the midline and hit her head on about a mile and a half from our house. I think it was certainly that moment when I learned that your life can completely turn upside down in 1 second. I did learn that with a faith and the love of the family and friends, you can get through anything. But that journey isn't easy, and I hit the reset button over and over and over and over because I was always in this place. I can't. I learned from that experience the loss of an unborn child, of my spouse. When I was able to return to work, I knew what it was like not just to be a working dad, but also a working mom. Okay? And all of a sudden, there was just a shift in that once my family is provided for, then I could focus on my goal and career. So what I'm trying to say, at that time, it was much more important for me to take cupcakes to my daughter's school classroom than go to a lecture at a hospital conference room. In my fourth year of residency, the faculty asked me if I would assume the position of administrative chief resident for all of the residents, which were 16 in our program. And this is by far the worst job performance that I have ever done. This job required getting every doctor to their schedules and all the budgeting, and I am exactly the opposite of that person that can manage that. And I would say, no doubt about it, I know my weaknesses, and being the administrator of these people was not my forte. In my fourth year of residency, I was given an award. To this day, I don't know how I was selected for this. I was asked to go to Washington, D.C., where several residents from around the country met with the head of the CDC and some academic heads from government posts and universities throughout the country. And these people represent hundreds of people that are sort of ordained with the mission to be certain the information the health disciplines receive is valid. They present their research, but they go into the research of all other people, making sure that the way the research is done produces results that are valid, to make sure that the results are not manipulated by someone's personal or commercial interest. It's an incredible job. And 2 days exposure with them is life-changing. And perhaps our introduction was to expose what they do to us. I knew I always wanted to do clinical medicine, but there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about what I learned in just 2 days, just a fraction of their skill set. And now, as I'm challenged with weight management, I realize the empty toolbox here of evidence-based lifestyle changes for populations of people with a rising epidemic of obesity. And the flood of conflicting information, I feel it's my job to go through and get as much evidence-based information that I can bring to the table, because fundamentally, when it's all laid out, the thing that everyone must do and realize is the necessity for lifestyle changes that will be productive. So I guess what I'm trying to say in this video is that it is the academic trials, the retrials, the books, the classrooms, the lectures, administrative challenges for me, the protocols that are set, clinical protocols that are developed for skill training, that those are the things that tell my brain how to doctor someone. But it is the life stuff, the fundamental faith and love of family and support of friends that embrace you, that the welcoming of miracles, the unwelcoming of personal losses and grief and the guilt associated with it, and just the appreciation of realizing that the people are still in our lives need to be appreciated. It's the life stuff that really tells the heart how to be a doctor. So in 1989, I moved to Birmingham, Alabama. I joined a group at was Medical Center East, now St. Vincent's East. I had two more miracles. My daughter Natalie was born, and then my son Will. They are both first and fourth year medical students now at the University of Alabama Medical School, and I'm really proud of them. They're amazing. I did OB the first 16 years in my practice, and really with OB, the way I describe it, a couple has a baby. All that joy that they have, and their family comes in, they just share all that joy. It's that joy times joy that I got to see almost every single day. Just an incredible job. But in 2005, I decided there was just time for a change, and I went into solo practice for gynecology only. And I was really able to do that because of two very important people that came with me that had worked with me for years, Gwen and Kelly. Now, Gwen, the first day I was a real doctor in 1989, I walked into a practice, and Gwen is the lead nurse in that practice. She's in charge of the other nurses, the clinical, she does administration, that person in the office that literally can do everything. And she came with me. I call her my resident chief administrator and really the boss. Now, no matter how hard I'm working, I know that she's working harder. She is now actually equity partner with me in the weight clinics. She is the boss for real. And I used to think I came to Birmingham because I found a perfect group out of my residency that was a great experience. But I am certain beyond doubt that I came to Birmingham to have Gwen by my side through this entire journey. I wouldn't be here without her, and I always call her my sister from another mother. Kelly came out of nursing school back in the 90s. We've been together for 20 years. And when I say these employees are like my extended family, they really are. When Kelly was getting married, and 2 weeks before she was to be married, her father passed away. And she asked me to walk her down the aisle, I guess in her case, the beach. And when she and her husband, Chad, were moving to Prattville, I'm like the enmeshed parent who can't let their kids leave home. We met and actually planned a design to build our first satellite clinic in Prattville. We met with the Alabama Medical Board before we did this, and she is in charge and the equity manager of the clinic there and doing great. My daughter, Casey, I mentioned earlier. Now, Casey grew up getting pulled out of bed in her PJs in the middle of the night when I had to go do an emergency surgery, and sometimes she would stand on a stool and watch through a glass window from another room and watch me do surgery. And her only question ever was, Dad, why do you put barbecue sauce on people before you operate? I mean, she's sort of the hospital mascot. She would stay with me in the hospital when I had to stay in the hospital overnight, and we would take sheets in my call room and the furniture, move it around and build these tents and pretend we were camping out. And as she grew up, she would round with me to see patients. And occasionally the patients would invite her in the room. And on one occasion, I was taking a bandage off of a lady's incision, and Casey stood right there very boldly said, Dad, that one is crooked. And that patient today, even 25 years later, we still laugh about that every time I see that patient. Well, basically, she's my biggest fan and my biggest critic. But she is now in charge equity partner in the clinic in Iredale and does an amazing job. And I want you to meet what I call all my extended family employees, because I couldn't do this without them. They're incredible people, and I owe them so much. But what I wanted to say in this video, there are going to be people in places existing where they're saying, I can't. Especially as it relates to people with weight management problems. That you can reset that I can't, a place of no hope, into a place where I didn't, which allows you to develop a new strategy. And in that strategy, like the educators I had before me, I would like to put a protocol together, evidence-based, something for you that gets down to studies apply to studies apply to groups, but you're an individual, and things have to be worked out on that level. Because when it comes down to it, the only sustainable success here is right and fundamental lifestyle change. And if you can reach your goals, I know the joy that you get when you get to your goal. That joy is an award, but it's only intensified as you sit and join your team members and share the joy times joy squared, and that'll be the best reward you have. And if I can be a part of that, that is awesome. And that's my passion here. So, if a medical student came back up to me today, I've got my own question prepared and ready to give, and I would ask it like this. Now that you're older, it's okay, but experienced, wiser doctor, what is the one significant thing in medicine you want to see never change? And I would relate it to this story. You know, I've been a doctor for a while, and I'll be pumping gas. I might be at Walmart at a restaurant, and a patient would just come up to me and start sharing an experience that we had together. I may or may not remember. Something that happened, an event, how her life changed, and these things that have all taken course because of this situation. And when I'm just sharing that joy with that patient and listening, and I think it's so awesome to be a part of that. But I always tell them the same thing, and it's something that I learned from my mom probably the earliest I can remember words she told me until the last words she said a year and a half ago before she passed at the age of 97. And that is, in all things, give God the credit. And when I'm listening to these stories in your life and how it's impacted, it is really a joyful moment for me. And I just stand back and I'll always say, we'll give God the credit. Now, after you leave, there's this something that happens. I want to explain to you. I'm going to use not me directly, a different story. My employee Dee Dee, my assistant Dee Dee, also my extended family, been with me for years. Just a few days ago, in the GYN clinic, a patient came in that we had not seen for a couple of years. And when she was leaving the office, she came back and sat next to Dee Dee. And she explained to Dee Dee that just 2 years ago, she woke up one morning, had forgotten that she had the strength to handle all her problems. She got up that morning, got some pills, a gun, got in her car, drove to a field. She was sitting in the field, about to take her own life, and something overcame her to call Dee Dee, and she called Dee Dee. Now, Dee Dee happened to, at that moment, which is a rare thing, to be at her desk where she could answer the phone. Dee Dee had no clue of the circumstances, just that she was talking to this patient in a conversation, and the patient said, as soon as they hung up, instead of killing herself, she used that phone to call for help. And we just saw her, and she's stronger than she's ever been. And she shares this with Dee Dee, and I could see the expressions on their face, and then when the patient left, Dee Dee just burst into tears. So this is what I'm trying to describe. I hear these stories, and it's so amazing, and I think what a privilege it is to be right there. But I know that God is supreme super, the supreme doctor. And when you share these things in your life that I got to be sort of an intersection and a part of that, it really is a privilege. And when I think God orchestrated all of that for you, and I feel like I can see where my part intersected as a part of that, the privilege, that when you tell me the story, I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be at the exact time, where I'm intended to be. And there's a feeling now that is joy times joy times joy. I can't describe it. And the first time that happened, and if it had never happened again, I answered a question I had never been able to answer. I never knew I wanted to be a doctor, but when that happened, that's exactly why I wanted to be a doctor. So I'm going to pay this forward a little bit. A young boy named Zeb, if he's out there, he lived in Memphis, Tennessee, on Dory Lane, down the street from me. I'm in the middle of the street, and you were at the end of the street. On June the 27th, 1987, 10:30 in the morning, clear blue skies, warm day, I had one hand on the lawnmower because my other hand was signaling my wife backing out of the driveway to roll the window down so I could kiss my daughter goodbye. And that very second, I heard someone yelling my daughter's name, Casey, Casey, and I turned around. And I could see this spot, but I heard this voice, and the spot was visually getting larger, and I see this kid riding his bicycle. I didn't really recognize him because he maybe had been at the house once before, maybe twice. And he's yelling, Casey, Casey, paddling faster than you can imagine. And in that split second, I'm thinking, I hope my daughter doesn't hear him, but even if she hears him, she won't budge because her favorite thing to do was go on errands with her mom. She's in the car, they're backing out. And as soon as I turned around, my daughter had already unbuckled her straps and she was literally climbing through the window, and I caught her. And my wife left for errands. So Zeb, 2 days later, I went to the lot where they take wrecked cars. And there was a gate that was locked. And against the advice of my family and friends that were there, a police officer, the owner of the lot, begging me not to go inside. My insistence, after about 30 or 40 minutes, I finally got to go inside the gate because I wanted to see the car. And when they opened it up and I was walking through this wide driveway, I remember the exact words, just, I'll be okay as long as it's not that car. Well, Zeb, when I got to that car, I was standing exactly where I was getting my daughter out of the car window. Except for now there's just some metal, fragments of child seat, a space obliterated by metal and glass. And I was frozen in this awareness that I couldn't think of one thing that would have gotten my daughter willingly out of that car. Not one thing, except for an older kid coming from down the street, had been by the house a few days earlier and paid attention to my daughter, was nice to her, made her feel special. And when she heard your voice, that prompted her to jump into my arms. And I'm not sure what motivated that sort of lightning speed and that 10-foot tall voice and a 4-foot tall body, but you are definitely my Superman. And I never knew if I would see you or even I could even sort of create the words that would justify the gratitude that I would have for you in that moment. And if I could share that joy, it would just pour out. I know you would experience the joy time joy what I would give you, because I wouldn't even know how to give you a thank you that would fulfill what I really feel. Except for if you could see this and you just think about not the randomness of, but the principled exact moment that you were sort of in an unlikely place. Because when I saw that frozen position I was in, this frozen awareness, I realized that you made my most unimaginable day less unimaginable. So if I could give you the joy times joy and you have the times joy cubed, then I've given you the best thank you that I or anyone could ever give you in this life. So I do want to thank everybody for watching this. I hope you watch the next video. This is where my passion came out in this next one. Thank you so much.